זוהי זכותו הטבעית של העם היהודי. לפיכך נתכנסנו, אנו חברי מועצת העם, נציגי היישוב העברי והתנועה הציונית, ביום סיום המנדט הבריטי על ארץ.
Well, I mean, I was in Britain when Auntie Dagmar, she was Swedish, but she was absolutely 100% for the Jewish people. And the first time I ever heard about the Jews going back to the land and a recreation of a state was from her. But I heard it from the pulpit in Duke Street Baptist Church in Richmond, Surrey. And I was so amazed, I thought, well, I'd never heard about this. You know, is it really in the Bible? So I went round to Auntie Dagmar and I said, what's all this about the Jews going back to the land? I'd never heard about it. Apparently the Bible is full of it, she said. She said, you will witness it, you will witness it. She said, they will go back to the land and the state will be recreated.
It's interesting because I happen to have come across a sermon by Spurgeon.
Yes.
In 1864.
Yes.
He was speaking about the Ezekiel 37, the
yes.
vision of the dry bones.
Yes.
And he said, if words mean anything, and if the context means anything, it's quite clear that one day the Jews will return to their ancient homeland to be followed. They have their political restoration to
yes.
the land to be followed by their spiritual restoration.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I was preaching in a Methodist church in Singapore, and the pastor of the church said, oh, before you go, he said, I have to find something for you. I discovered it in one of our doors, and he came with this message.
Amazing.
And it was actually a message of the British Jews Society,
mm-hmm.
you know, the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel amongst the Jews of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. And you're right, he actually said, first will be the political recreation of the state, then it will be followed by turmoil and war and conflict, and then will come the spiritual salvation of the Jewish people.
But you know, you mentioned hearing about it in Britain. I was here at the time that independence was declared.
Yes.
And I mean, we went wild.
Yes.
It was such a
amazing.
It was an out-of-world experience.
Yes, of course.
Really.
Of course.
And you know, the war of independence actually started on the 30th of November 1947.
Yes.
The day after the UN Palestine partition
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Arabs actually, both the Palestinians and mainly the Arabs in the surrounding countries, they warned that if the Jews dared to avail themselves of this resolution, we will attack.
Yes.
Which they did.
Yes.
Immediately on the 15th of May, 1948.
Yeah.
5 Arab armies.
Yes. Incredible, isn't it?
And this call that went out to the Arabs of Palestine, clear out of the way of our victorious armies, and then come back and join in the spoils, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, I remember, of course, I was young, very young at that point, but I mean, because Auntie Dagmar said this with such firmness, she said, read your Bible. She gave me a few scriptures to look at, and of course I went back. And I told my family, you know, that Auntie Dagmar says that the Jews are going to go back and the state is going to be recreated. And of course, they said, well, we always thought she was nuts. And that clearly she is. Has she never heard of Hitler? I mean, all the Jews who would go back are the Jews that he's slaughtering. They won't go back from Britain, we have it too well, nor from the United States, they won't go back from there. So, but it happened. And so I remember then a kind of an extraordinary feeling, as you must have had, that somehow or other some huge prophetic milestone had been passed.
Yes.
And the reunification of Jerusalem on the 7th of June 1967 was the second greatest thing. Even Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones said that if this retaking of Jerusalem by Israel remains in Jewish hands, then we have to reform a lot of our understanding of theology to do with Israel.
And don't forget, June 1967, it was actually a jubilee year from the time that the city was surrendered to the British, ending 400 years of Turkish Muslim occupation.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yes, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, for you it would be even more exciting being here and actually witnessing it.
For me, it was terribly exciting because for 19 years I couldn't visit the old city. I couldn't visit the wall.
Yeah, yeah, amazing, isn't it?
And also, when I had been on Mount Scopus, I told you, when I witnessed they had that convoy massacre.
Yeah.
And then the road to Scopus was all of a sudden opened again in '67.
Yeah.
All of these things meant such a tremendous lot.
Incredible.
But it's interesting. This is, don't forget, 10 years before I made my commitment to Yeshua.
Yes.
1967.
Yeah.
Now, the first night of the Six-Day War, I said to my children at the time, I sensed the planes we're hearing are our planes, and I sense a great victory. I was saying something prophetic without really realizing it.
Yes.
And this was quite a few hours before Rabin and Hod came on the air to announce about the destruction of the Egyptian
their Air Force.
Yes.
Amazing.
The Palestine Liberation Organization was founded in 1964, 3 years before we regained the land in 1967.
Yeah.
So what was the Palestine liberation? What was the liberation? Obviously, they wanted the whole of the land. And they've always wanted it. Where even when they turned down the 1947 UN Palestine Partition Resolution. But even before that, there was the British Peel Commission, for instance. They refused. They refused all the time. They refused, and now all of a sudden, they want to go back to Resolution 181, the UN Palestine Partition Resolution.